Moses Wetangula, and trying to fit into those shoes of the opposition leader right now. It fits me well, but who took the other shoe? We've had Moses Wetangula declaring himself a de facto opposition leader right now that we know Kalonzo and Raila Odinga now, they're having a happy medium with the government.
The increasing concern by Kenyans on whether we have killed the opposition or not indicates the good news that the public appreciates that a good government cannot function without a good opposition, which is a good thing. But to me, this having arisen from the fact that Raila led his party into government and Kalonzo has followed suit, should not be seen to be a big issue. This is not the first time. The strength of the opposition in this country, it has not traditionally depended on the number of members of parliament in the opposition. It has depended on the quality of the members of parliament who are opposition-minded. Let me take Kenyans down memory lane. In the 60s and 70s, it took only a very small number of MPs, Josiah Mwangi Kariuki, Martin Shukuku, Elijah Mwangale, and John Marie to keep the government of the day in check, and it worked. In the late 70s and later on in the 80s, again, it was only a few members of parliament who Charles Njonjo, then Attorney General, referred to as the 7 bearded sisters. These were Chelagat Mutai, James Orengo, Martin Shukuku, Georgia Nyona, Abuya Buya, and Dr. Jibula Watsuma. They did a sterling job. Later on, as 90s started, these 7 bearded sisters were joined by Kenneth Matiba and Rubia and Njeu Katabaki, and they did a sterling job at a time when Kenya was actually a one-party state. And then finally, I remember the time of the Grand Coalition government. Mm-hmm. In the Grand Coalition government, everybody went into government, but only a handful of us remained in the opposition and we kept the government in check. I recall the strength at that time of Mother Karua, Johnson Mugatana, Kitobu Manyara, and of course myself. We did such a good job that at that time, we even led Parliament, and I really thank Parliament of that time. We led Parliament into censoring ministers, which included the Amos Kimunya that Mheshimiwa has referred to earlier on in this discussion. We censored Professor Ongeri, we censored the current Deputy President, and did a very good job. So Kenyans should not be worried. I'm just asking Honorable Wetangula to ignore the cartoons and so on and remain focused. He doesn't need a lot of MPs of Fort Kenya. If some of the Fort Kenya MPs will be weak-kneed, he can go and make friendship with members of parliament who are independent. They were not sponsored by Jubilee or the NASA parties. They'll form a very strong opposition, and I'm quite hopeful that even if that effort of Wetangula then fails, people will be touched at their hearts, especially people like my brother Amollo Otiende here. He has carried a very good CV to Parliament. The expectations of many people in his constituents and in the country alike. We don't expect you to go and play politics of sycophancy. Mwaura, you have studied very well. This is your time. Mheshimiwa Wamatangi does very well until you mention the name of the president, then he he flips.
Let's say from Otiende, looking at that particular editorial cartoon right now, do you think what Stano is actually trying to depict here, that yes, Honorable Wetangula cannot really fit in these tattered shoes of the opposition?
I don't know where to start, but let me start from where my brother Dr. Khalwale left. Dr. Khalwale did very well, but my brother, you do not extol your own virtues. You need people like me to say you did a good job. I know you did a good job, but let others say it, like I am saying it on your behalf, among others. But really, what I wonder about that cartoon and a lot of this discussion, when you say opposition, I mean, what do people take it to mean? My brother Wetangula obviously is a man in a crisis of identity, so he can't fit in those shoes, but he does not need to, because my understanding, I am a member of parliament elected on the ODM party, which is the minority party in parliament. We remain a minority party in parliament, and we have not crossed over anywhere. You know, sometimes I wonder what really we are talking about, because look, Raila Amollo Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka are our leaders in NASA and in ODM and WIPA, but they are not in parliament. So any decision that is made, either way, is not one that immediately reflects in parliament. We will remain what is called minority, but what people want to call opposition out there in parliament. The mere fact that there's been some sort of cooperation instead of confrontation does not say that now we have abdicated our role as opposition members. We will always remain at two levels. One, as members of the minority party in parliament, and that is why we maintain our side, and we will maintain our oversight inside and outside of parliament. But secondly, as an entire house, our constitutional democracy requires that parliament generally provides oversight over the executive, irrespective of whether you're majority and minority. As far as I know, that has continued to happen, either through parliament generally or through parliamentary committees like PSC, PIC, and others. And so I think that is not a problem. I think what we must focus on is not the small issues of whether my brother Wetangula can now claim to, to be the leader of opposition, because he cannot lead that opposition, because he does not have any numbers. What we must focus on, and I agree with Dr. Khalwale, is that we must remember our individual roles as persons who are elected by people to do our work of oversight collectively and individually. And two, it must not be mistaken that because as a party we retreated and are engaged in cooperation. We are engaged in cooperation, but that cooperation is for the future of this country. The whole idea of why we are working together is to find a solution that will help us for many years to come, so that we do not have this cycle of every 5 years, cycle of violence, cycle of failed election. And so that does not take away our immediate role as members of the minority and as opposition generally within this country. We will continue to do that.
All right. Let's hear from Isaac Mwaura.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's very funny that Dr. Mwaura is talking about the corruption. It reminds me of the Grand Coalition about when Kalonzo Musyoka said that the problem with the Grand Coalition government is the serikali ya kusetiana, but there's something that we must accept about the handshake, that it really, if you look at the statements of President Uhuru Kenyatta and Right Honorable Raila Odinga, when they shook their hands, they identified issues that need to be tackled. And I think even this handshake would help us to sort out those issues, around the election malpractices, about a divided country. That for me is more important than just having people opposing government for the sake of it. However, there are also issues of credibility around people who may want to fill this space. I mean, Mutunga has already said that we need a new opposition. I can see from the Daily Nation, Suba Churchill saying that we need to look at the civil society and the religious sector. The problem is about credibility, because if you want to be somebody who people can listen to, then, you must also come to equity with the clean hands, because, some of the people who are fashioning themselves as the alternative voice really don't have very good, credentials. Look at the civil society. The problem with civil society is that they seem to have taken political sides, very openly so. And that way then they lost their neutrality. Religious leaders, I think it's like tattered clothes. It's already gone, So any member of parliament, any senator who would want to, play that role, I think we still have a lot of, work that we do individually as members. We have caucuses in parliament. And I don't think you can say at any given point in time that we will have a convergence of opinions simply because it's cooperation. Why am I saying so? Because if that were to be the case, then Chumo's name would have already sailed through, the vetting, because people also have conscience. And you will see increasingly Debarl, some form of liberation. When everybody is cooperating, it makes us now to think with our heads up there. Before it was about psychopaths, about supporting Raila, supporting Uhuru. But now we can think very objectively. And I think you can see that. People are becoming more sober, debates are becoming more robust. And I think it helps us to move away from that polemic kind of view where you only oppose for the sake of opposing. I do not, for example, imagine that we will have a lot of credibility around Fort Kenya. That is my opinion. Certainly because of the fact that you need to look at the track record. The reason why some of the people have played the opposition role effectively in the past is because they have some reform credentials. That may be lacking with the new wannabes.
Thank you. Let's say from Kimani Wamatangi.
Debarl, I would take it this way, and I would start probably from where Boni Khalwale left it, save for the last comment that he made. That was delight. Because you see, since independence, Debarl, one would logically argue that that's when we started, branding our politics, and what style and type of politics should we and would we need as a country, and that's why, all those names that were mentioned there by Boni, you remember them with passion. How they started our political journey. And the type and style of political heroes we wanted to create, but now in that metamorphosis, in the mutation and growth of our politics, you would ask yourself, have we evolved into what one would have thought then would be the politician of today in modern day Kenya, and be where we are, and maybe the big answer would be no, because in that growth of our politics, we have cocktailed it with so much of extras, like probably what slipped out of the tongue of my good friend. The corruption and greed, such that now you have a completely new animal. That is now the adult of what started in 1963. And so you would be asking yourself then, how do we define our politics? And that's why I would say, if you look at what an opposition leader would fit, the kind of bill they would fit in, you would be asking, is that question logically answerable when you talk about Moses Wetangula and what he is thinking? For example, if he said, I want to be the leader of opposition in this country. You see, we have branded our politics such that unless it is so optical and visual that you are shouting, you are abusing, you are on the streets, then that is when you would want to define yourself as an opposition leader. But the question, and that's why I would agree with Dr. Amollo, is it more of constructive criticism and building bridges, so to say, in quotes, and is it about finding solutions more through oversight than the confrontation? And I believe that's where we would lose it. I would want to advise, and I would also agree with some of the comments made by my colleague here, that I would ask the deputy party leader of Ford Kenya, because he sits here in this panel, would, for example, a cocktail or a grouping of Amani, Congress and Ford Kenya form the basis of leadership you would call critical opposition in government right now, and we would be underlining these questions, Debarl. For example, when they're uniting and they're saying we want to unite, what would be their founding reasons for them to unite? Would it be to lead this country to a better threshold? You would want to argue very questionable. I mean, maybe they would want to be making a political grouping whereby they would want to negotiate a certain stake in whatever is coming in the future. So would that be what you would call the definition of a good opposition leader? And I believe One thing that Deputy Party Leader of Ford Kenya, now that it is your man who is on the spot, you would need really to rethink is and I want to borrow that from a cartoon that was carried out in the Nation yesterday, you know, whereby you described him, and, although I don't think it was very fair. You know, that cartoon where they drew Wetangula, you know, carrying weights, you know, flexing his muscle, 500 kg on each side, but they were saying that he's all talk and no muscle. You know, and well, as a personally, I didn't think it was a very fair, you know, representation of him. But however, the thing is this, Boni Khalwale, because you're the deputy party leader, if truthfully and seriously you want to step into that role, then you must broaden your horizons. You must expand your imagination and real reasons, and then determine that you want to really go there and challenge issues, and ask your leader there. Forget then about the first priority of where will I be sitting in 2022 or what will I be. Those were not the reasons why all those names you mentioned, Anyona, you know, and the whole of the bearded system, including Orengo today, and including some of our departed leaders like Masinde Muliro, you know, from your background.
Thank you.
Those were not really the inspirational reasons.
Thank you. Let's hear from Jakoyo.
They got into.
Briefly.
Well, we are talking about nothing. I saw Boni over the weekend, really fired up. And let me advise Boni.
What?
That him and Wetangula are like night and day. The reason why Boni is respected is because he has not been mentioned in any graft. You know, we are struggling because of our bad past. And Wetangula belongs to that bad past. I can tell you without, you know, a shred of doubt. You have not, I have not heard you. I wish we just found a way of encouraging the current environment to do the rules to make it possible for opposition to thrive. Meaning, in civilized societies, there is always the opposite of government. And it is in law that you have minority in parliament or in the legislature. In our situation, because the laws have never been there, the good brains and the brave ones have always become the de facto opposition.
Yes.
I don't think Wetangula is brave. He may have good brains, that I don't doubt. Mm-hmm. But bravery that can require, that can meet tear gas, that can fight the government, that he has never been. He has always been a systems person. So I want to encourage my friend Wetangula, don't be cheated by Boni. Go to NASA. We have tried it the other way around. It didn't work because there are no the rules of the game were being, when we passed the new constitution, we thought we had done so much, but we didn't do enough. So now we need to go back to the drawing board and come up with proper laws that would make us have a proper playing field for opposition to really check on government. What has Raila done? I told Raila, and if he's watching, he can contradict me, that you are being intimidated by systems people. Wetangula, Musalia, Kalonzo, all these are systems persons. Engage the system so that we can get a proper platform of making further changes. Because anytime we come together, we always make changes. And I hope at the end of it all, we will have made changes that can also change all of us, including Raila. That to me would be a race towards civilization. But to say you are official opposition, what is official opposition? In this country, there is only one opposition. If he says we are opposing, that is Raila. Because he means well for this country. The rest of these people are all systems person. And if you know any other Kenyan, whether it is Ruto, whether it is Musalia, whether it is Kalonzo, whether it is Wetangula, whether it is who, challenge me.
I am here.
All of those are
here.
systems person except Raila.
All right, you're assistant person, Boni Khalwale.
Boni is not.
Yeah. You tell us how you're assistant person.
You see, the important thing I want to respond to are the issues raised by Wamatangi. I think it's important that we tell Kenyans what it is that is not being done to define the opposition that we want now. To my mind, the leaders of ODM and Wiper would do this country a lot if they made up their minds whether they are in government or not. Having done that, it will offer an opportunity for constitutional organs, which include county assemblies, National Assembly, the Senate, to take a position on who is in government and who is not in government. The second point is on the part of Wetangula. I don't see what is stopping Wetangula from moving away and going further, away from just the claim that he's the official leader. Today, he should, I don't know if the parliament is in session. If it is, today he should rise in his place and submit a letter to the Speaker of the Senate. Similarly, in the National Assembly, the same should be done, asking the Speaker to find that ODM and Wiper have since moved into government. The Speaker will make a ruling. He will. Wait a minute. They will not be the first time. Kaparo made such a ruling when Raila moved during the NDP Kanu Maja. Kaparo made that ruling. It is that ruling that saved Dr. Shemo Chuodo, who was the only NDP MP in the opposition. In fact, by dint of that ruling, it helped Dr. Shemo Chuodo to be given a committee, a position that was donated to him by Charity Ngilu. I remember this very well. Marende was also forced to make a similar decision. Now, once he challenges the Speaker to make that decision, the Speaker they make their rulings based on precedents, amongst other things. They also make their rulings based on the law and the standing orders of the House. The Speaker then will find that these two parliamentary parties, having gone to the government side, they should relinquish all the leadership positions they have in committees and offices of parliament that are reserved for the opposition. These include leaders of majority, leaders of minority. It includes chairing parliamentary oversight committees, public accounts, public investment committees. And then once that decision is made, it doesn't matter what ODM will be saying or Wiper, the Speaker will have ruled and people will go back and constitute committees afresh. That is the law as it is.
But don't you think there's something in the offing, Dr. Otiende? If we may look at yesterday's Star as well, if we may just pick it up, and there was a probing question there on the headline cover, or the cover of a Star, is Uhuru planning unity government?
Well, let me comment on this. What Dr. Khalwale says, whether it may have historically been right or done, that was in the different context in terms of the law. Right now, there's no legal basis for what Dr. Khalwale is inviting Moses Wetangula to do. And even if he tried it, he would fail. In fact, it should be remembered that I actually think it's quite interesting that we should be discussing whether my friend Moses Wetangula should be the leader of opposition, while he was the leader of minority in Senate, which he just lost. So isn't that defeatist? But I think the more fundamental question should be, what is it that Moses Wetangula wants to do or can do and is being prevented from doing right now because somebody somewhere has not pronounced him as the leader of opposition? There's nothing. You lead. Raila does not hold any formal position. But I agree with Jakoyo. Everyone knows that he is the leader. So what is it that Moses Wetangula cannot do, which he will do if he's pronounced, whether by parliament or some assembly in Uhuru Park, as the leader? Nothing stops him and anybody else, including my brother here, Dr. Khalwale, from taking that position. the leadership, and I've said this before, leadership does not just mean that you must be inside parliament. You can lead from outside parliament. Secondly, and I think going now to what you're talking about, looking, I think you had introduced the picture where President Kenyatta was meeting former President Moi.
Yes.
I think what I can say, it appears that there are tectonic movements.
Yes.
There are tectonic political movements and alignments. And in those alignments, former leaders like President Moi finds it easier to meet President Kenyatta, to meet Raila Amollo Odinga and others, but does not find favor with meeting the deputy president. And I think, for me, those are very telling political movements. Secondly, I think in those tectonic movements, there are people who find themselves in great difficulty. And one of them is my brother, our friend, the Senator Moses Wetangula. I think him and a few others have no idea where to go in terms of this political formation. All I can say is that from where I stand, this country has always appeared to move in the right direction, whether legally or constitutionally, when the big guns appear to have some understanding. Secondly, to the extent that the handshake is about finding a better future for this country, the cooperation, and although there's a lot of corruption, so the word corruption can come to mind, everywhere, in each of these pages of the newspapers, you must find something about corruption. But the cooperation is for the betterment of this country. And therefore, if former leaders and current leaders can actually focus on that, I think it's a good thing.
All right.